Hey guys, this is Alex from Ignite Prep. Welcome to the Logical Reasoning intro video. I'm really excited for you all to be joining me on this journey seeking a 99 percentile score, okay? This lesson is going to be focusing on giving us an introduction to the logical reasoning section as a whole, okay? This is going to be a really basic lesson. And what I want to do here is shape your knowledge, shape your understanding of what this section is looking for you to do. What we're going to be taking a look at here is the structure of the logical reasoning section, timing, the section directions given to us by LSAT, and then we're looking to set goals for our studying to maximize results and efficiency. But before we get into all of that, I do want to start this course with one little forward. I have gotten a 180 on the LSAT now twice, all right? I've been tutoring this course for the better part of 10 years now, okay? And I have seen a lot of students fail and a lot of students succeed looking to achieve a 99th percentile score. I've seen all different kinds of approaches, all different kinds of mindsets, all different kinds of people, all on the same journey that you are in right now, okay? Now, having a different approach is fine. Having a different way of looking at the test is fine. But there are a few core elements to being a 99th percentile scorer that do not change from person to person, okay? So those are going to be those elements that you're looking to want to absorb from me, okay? So the first thing that I want to point out is do not isolate yourself. I've seen plenty of really smart, really bright students just kind of get eaten alive by this test because they burn themselves out, okay? Now, I understand the intuition behind the idea of just kind of locking yourself in your room for like 10 hours a day, getting some good studying done, and that's great, except that there's two problems with that. Number one is it's really not maintainable. You're going to burn out. You're going to build in yourself a negative connotation of this test, and we really don't want that. We want you positive and optimistic regarding this test because it's so hard to truly master something when you fear it, right? It's pretty easy. Number two is there's only so many things in the day that your brain can absorb, only so many things that you can take in and really remember and comprehend in a day. All right, we do not want to be overloading our brains. We want whatever time we spent studying, we want it to be efficient. We want to be gaining things out of that and not just studying for the sake of studying. Since you're a part of this course, I know for a fact that you have a study plan. You have a daily structure that I've given you that is designed to get you towards your goal, okay? Now, if you feel like you need a little bit more work, there's a button for that, okay? We will give you more work, but we will not give you 8 or 10 hours of work a day, all right? You should really try to limit yourself to somewhere between 4 to 6 hours of studying a day. I think that's kind of the perfect amount, especially if you're someone who's looking at studying for more than 3 or 4 months, all right? We want to look at the LSAT like it is a marathon instead of a sprint. No one finishes a marathon beginning the first mile like it's a 100-meter sprint, okay? The same way that no one is going to succeed on this test burning themselves out in the first week and expecting some massive results in a short period of time. So limit yourself, okay? We'll get more into that in the timing section of this test, this course, but for now, let's get into it, okay? All right, so the logical reasoning section, it has 24 to 26 questions, all right? And you have 35 minutes to complete that section. That breaks down to about 1 minute and 25 seconds per question, but it's really stupid to go ahead and partition out exactly 1 minute, 25 seconds for every single question. Right? Logical reasoning is different than the other two sections of this test because there is a ton of variability here. We have so many different question types, so many underlying skills to master that you really harm yourself looking at this test formulaically. You have to be flexible, all right? Now, towards that idea, towards that goal, what you want to do is be flexible with your time, okay? So usually, the first 12-ish questions on this test are going to be pretty easy. You're going to get the basic transparent traps and patterns that you can pretty easily learn if you've got a good basic level of studying. All right, those questions we want to be working closer to 40 to 45 seconds per question, okay? Now, the reason that we're doing that is to add time in our time piggy bank. We need a time piggy bank because as the section progresses, things are going to get harder. And you have questions on these tests that are objectively hard, that are difficult, they're testing difficult concepts, but then you have a completely different beast of questions that are not only hard, but are time dumps, okay? And it's those time dumps that are really going to kill us because they are twofold. Number one, they're going to get you to waste, obviously, a lot of time. We should get that based off of their name, duh, right? Number two is that they're going to hurt your confidence, okay? Now, this is kind of like a downstream trap. If you're using my analytics or really any other analytics, you're going to see in a lot of practice tests that LSAT will write a hard question buried amongst easy questions, All right, so you have like a 4 or a 5-star question somewhere. And then the questions coming after are going to be 1 or 2-star questions. So what they're trying to get you to do is they're trying to get you frustrated. They're trying to get you to, number one, waste some time and spend 3 or 4 minutes on a question. And then they also want to get you overthinking, overanalyzing, and feeling stupid when you approach those easy questions after you get the hard one wrong. Okay? We want to avoid that kind of trap. And that comes from an awareness of their existence first. Because you can't address something if you don't even know it exists, right? So let's talk a little bit about those time dump questions for just another second. All right? If you are spending more than 3 or 4 minutes on an LSAT question, I would say probably chances are you're not going to get it right. All you're going to be doing is overanalyzing, overthinking, and inserting false inferences into your little stimulus, your situation, and frustrating yourself. If I see myself spending more than 2.5 minutes and getting into that 3-4 minute territory, then I take a pause and I decide, do I move on to the next question and then come back to that question with a fresh mindset at the end of my section, unbiased, relaxed, and feeling confident to look at it with a fresh set of eyes. And that's what I would encourage you guys to do as well. Make a judgment call. Okay, so now to recap timing and strategy. On test days, spend about 40 to 45 seconds on an easier question. That's totally doable, okay? Then you have 2 to 2.5 minutes on those harder questions, which is something that you can totally maintain, okay? Now, post-COVID or around the same time as COVID, the LSAT moved digital, okay? So we have this new interface to make sense of. So with this interface, we have a countdown clock counting down second by second by second, which I'm sure for all of you guys is super stressful. It's not a pretty sight, and I don't like it. I think it's definitely kind of harmful to keep checking on that clock. And so we're going to steal another thing from these marathon runners, and that's going to be the idea of grouping up your time, okay? It's kind of detrimental to your run time when you're running to constantly keep checking your Apple Watch or your lap timer like every 10 seconds because you're losing focus on your run, all right? That mental energy you need to get one foot in front of the other is being wasted on a clock, all right? And we likewise don't want to be wasting time on the LSAT on a clock, right? So what I do is I set for myself an average pace, all right? Through all the practice and stuff we're going to be doing together, that should be pretty easy for you to figure out a pace, and you can build and decide on that pace using our analytics, all right? So say that it takes us 4.5 minutes to get the first 5 questions, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to know on test day that's where my rough 5-question time is, all right? And I'm just going to kind of periodically glance at my clock to see where my pace is at without worrying so much about the countdown, all right? If I'm at question number 3 and I'm 3 minutes deep, I know that I'm working a little bit faster, okay? And that maybe I should slow down a little even. Okay, so that's what we want to do with our timing on test day. Now let's talk about timing with regards to studying. And we're going to hopefully correct together a mistake I see a lot of students do. So we can probably all agree that the LSAT gives you a pretty crappy time limit, 1 minute and 25 seconds, 1 minute 30 seconds to read an argument, break it down, go through 5 answer choices, and all of that, with pretty immense pressure on top of you. You don't need to be doing that right now in your practice. The whole goal of taking a course, of getting a tutor like this, is to change your mindset, to change your intuition, and to learn new question types and strategies. You cannot do any of those things to the best of your ability with the ridiculous time pressure on top of you, okay? So for the next 3-ish weeks, what I want you to be doing is working any practice I give you untimed, okay? Take whatever time you need to feel comfortable taking that problem set, that practice test, that LR section. Take whatever time you need to get through it, and then once we get closer to test day, we'll wean you off of that comfortable time, the same way smokers wean off cigarettes. Okay, so maybe you start out at 45 seconds, and then just every practice section we take off, 2 or 3 minutes. So it's a slight gradual decrease down to time, okay? That way we maintain that strategy and that content awareness we've built together and also get it down to time conditions. If you cold turkey it and go straight down from 45 minutes to 35 minutes, of course you're going to see a drop in score. That's just not reasonable to do, and that sets the bar too high for you. Take whatever time you need to feel comfortable methodically going through my strategy. Almost every student I've ever had to do a consultation with, whether I was teaching for a class or doing one-on-one, everybody would say, I have this big issue with time. I can't get through the end of my section, okay? Timing is nowhere near as much of an issue as most students think it is. And the reason for that is this, is that right now you are approaching the LSAT with a baseline kind of test-taking approach that you developed in college and in high school, and that just does not apply to these standardized tests. So with this strategy, I'm going to teach you, we're going to get you to be more efficient, looking at the right things and working faster. So that combined with a good timing strategy is going to make sure that you have more than enough time on test day and hopefully alleviate some of that pressure off of your shoulders. Next, let's take a look at the section directions. All right, now I was probably like most of you, and I absolutely blew through these my first couple of times taking practice tests. And it wasn't until somebody pointed them out that I realized that there actually is some important information here. Now, I'm not saying in your next practice set or on test day, just beeline straight to the LR directions. I don't think they ever actually changed. So, this lesson probably will do it for you as far as the directions are concerned, all right? So what we want to be doing here is we want to be seeing what LSAT themselves has to say about our goals in this section and pull out any useful information we can, okay? So let's take a look. It says the questions in this section are based on the reasoning contained in brief statements or passages. For some questions, more than one of the choices could conceivably answer the question. However, you are to choose the best answer. That is the response that most accurately and completely answers the question. You should not make assumptions that are by common sense standards implausible, superfluous, or incompatible with the passage. After you have chosen the best answer, blacken the corresponding space on your answer sheet. All right, great. So, we've got that first little block done. Obviously, I took these directions, from an older practice test on your guys' test day. Things are going to be digital, so you're not going to be blackening any answer choices, right? So let's take apart the statements one by one and see what we can pull out of them. The first thing is going to be this. For some questions, more than one of the choices could conceivably answer the question. However, you are to choose the best answer. That is the response that most accurately and completely answers the question. All right, so what is LSAT telling you here? I think the first thing is actually kind of confusing and misleading in that they say something is the best answer. Okay, it's kind of a fallacy. All right, there's only one correct answer choice for every single one of these questions. Very, very, very rarely do you see the LSAT have to omit a question because they had an oopsie in the answer choices. All right, so there is only one correct answer choice and there are 4 incorrect answer choices. What they are saying here, though, is that you should be reading all of your answer choices. All right. A lot of the traps in the answer choices come before the correct answer choice. They want you to screw up your understanding of the stimulus by having a trap answer choice contradict what you read. What they're hoping you're going to do is say, okay, I was just too stupid to see what this trap answer choice is saying to me. Now you've gone and changed your understanding of the stimulus, right? You're not going to recognize your correct answer. Then the other thing that they're doing is that a lot of the answer choices differ by, just one single word. All right, so say you read your stimulus, you critically read, you did a great job, you apply the strategy, and you go to the answer choices and you read answer choice A, and you like it. All right, what do? Do you pick answer choice A, or do you keep reading the rest of them? You should be reading the rest of them. You should read every single answer choice on this test, because usually what can happen is that answer choice B can be saying the exact same thing as A, except for one little word. And because you were confident, because you're working under time and pressure, all right, maybe you missed that one little word. It happens, we all make mistakes, but if you skip answer choice B, you are very unlikely to realize that you overlooked something in A. But if you read choice B or choice C or whatever answer choice is similar to A, maybe now you'll be able to see like, hold on, wait a second, this is pretty close to what I liked. What's the difference here? What's going on? And so for that reason, we want to be reading every single one of our answer choices. Okay. Next up, you should not make assumptions that are by common sense standards implausible, superfluous, or incompatible with the passage. Okay, so the LSAT is getting a little bit pretentious here with their language. All right, let's break down what this means. First of all, what does superfluous mean? Okay, that's a great LSAT vocab word. Okay, superfluous is something that is unnecessary, something that is excessive. What they're telling you is do not take things too far. Take what evidence, take what facts we've given you and take them at face value. Do not insert yourself. Do not put words in the author's mouth. Okay? Now they bring up a pretty controversial topic as far as the LSAT, common sense. All right? And it's controversial because they've never really explicitly defined what they draw the line on common sense. All right? Where's that line? In general, though, because we have 90 practice tests to break down and really see what parameters they're testing with, I can give you this general rule of thumb. LSAT considers common sense anything that your normal average American high school student would know. So, for example, it would be considered common knowledge by this standard that George Washington was the first president of the United States. It would not be considered common knowledge who his Secretary of State was. All right, that's superfluous. It's ridiculous to know, and we would never be able to know that, all right, without a little bit more research or some specialized knowledge. Remember that the LSAT is not a test of specialized knowledge, okay? Another good example of something that would be considered common sense is if I give you this statement. Teslas of the future will be able to drive from San Diego to San Francisco in a single charge. What would be common sense based off of that would be that Teslas now do not have this ability. Okay, it's a pretty common sense inference, all right, or else why would I say that Teslas in the future will be able to do this if they can do it now? It's not news then. The other thing is scope. Logical reasoning and reading comprehension both hit the concept of scope very hard, all right? And so what LSAC here is telling you, do not take things farther. Do not be superfluous. Do not be incompatible or excessive with whatever facts we give you. Stay within the parameters of the argument. I'm not going to get crazy far into scope in this lesson because we have a dedicated little lesson in problem set practicing scope for both logical reasoning and reading comprehension. But scope in general is defined as how far into the topic does your stimulus go. We cannot ever be expanding the scope of our argument. For example, if I have a conclusion, I have an argument saying Jamaican runners all wear Nikes. I cannot broaden my scope from Jamaican runners into all runners and say all runners wear Nikes. We have to stay within the parameters of our argument. So next, let's take a look at the parts of a logical reasoning question. First up is our stimulus, and our stimulus is going to be an argument or just a set of facts. It's going to be the situation that you're reading through. Something very important here. Always in logical reasoning, your premises or your evidence in your stimulus are accepted to be true, okay? Do not try and argue with them or make any what-if questions, all right? So that ties into what I was just saying about that second half of the directions. Do not extend things beyond the scope. Do not try and argue with the evidence. The LSAT is a critical reasoning test, not an arguing test, okay? You will never get the correct answer just negating a piece of evidence or negating a fact. You can't negate a fact at all, right? Now, you can kind of equate that in your head to the idea that the LSAT is the test for people who want to become lawyers. You should be thinking and reading like a lawyer. And it would be kind of a crappy lawyer who just walked into court and just said, nope, all this evidence is bullshit, right? They can't say that. They have to work to show how the evidence proves their client innocent or guilty, all right, depending on what side they're on. So we're thinking and reading like a lawyer. The next thing here we have is the stem. So the question stem is going to be the goal or the lens by which you are reading things. So with a question stem, there is one little quick tip I can give you. You should always be looking for words like accept and cannot. All right, try and highlight these on your test day, or it's just in practice when you see them, because it's super easy to miss them and forget what your goal is. All right, the accept or the cannot, it flips your goal to the opposite. If you're looking for something to strengthen and then all of a sudden you have an accept, then it becomes a not strengthened question or something like that, right? You can see here we have a cannot, all right, or an accept, and we've got it highlighted. You should be doing that on test day. It's just kind of a foolproof way to not make a stupid mistake. Our last thing is going to be the answer choices, all right? So on the LSAT, across the 3 sections, you will always have 5 possible answer choices, A through E. That's never going to change. You have to figure out which one meets the goal of your question stem the best, according to LSAC. All right, and there are 2 ways to do this. Number 1, like the correct answer choice. Number 2, dislike the 4 incorrect answer choices. Okay, so I would say I'm a pretty good LSAT test taker. I am comfortable doing both. Both times I took my LSAT, I think it would be pretty fair to say that I worked maybe 25 to 30% of my questions that second way, where I didn't love my correct answer choice, but I just couldn't find anything wrong with it. Whereas I could find something definitively wrong with the other 4. We are under time conditions. You cannot go into test day with the mindset of I am going to really love and be able to defend every single answer choice I pick. We have to be using our time wisely, okay? And sometimes it's easier to find hay in the haystack than a needle, okay? And we just have to have, we just happen to have more incorrect answer choices than correct answer choices. If you were stooped and you couldn't find an answer choice that you love, it only helps you to try and cross out the incorrect answer choices. Because either you cross out all 4, or maybe you cross out 2, and now you have a better chance of guessing. A good 99 percentile test taker is comfortable answering questions on test day both of these ways. Now, let's get into a question I get asked so frequently is, Alex, where should I start in my question? Should I read my question stem first, or should I read my stimulus? Okay, so The answer to that is kind of complicated. So I'm going to be honest with you, like I was a proponent of reading the question stem first for a long time. And I actually took my test the first time with the strategy of reading the question stem first. And obviously that worked for me. I got a 180. But since then, I've seen a lot of different students and a lot of different people and how they approach the test, what they bring to their study. And I've come kind of to the realization that this approach just does not work for most people because you have to be like crazy self-aware. And I don't want to set the bar too high with some unrealistic expectation for you guys. I want meetable, realistic expectations. And what usually happens when you start by reading your question stem first is that you bias yourself towards the stimulus. A lot of these question stems contain an idea or a phrase or a sentence or a word from your stimulus that you're going to recognize. If you read the question stem first, then what do you think is going to happen? You're going to now, put more emphasis on this phrase than probably it's worth. So we want to avoid that no matter what question type you're presented with. In logical reasoning, your goal is always going to be the same. Initially, it is to evaluate the reasoning present. Okay, so no matter what question type we have, we want that to be our initial goal. So start by reading your stimulus first and then read your question stem. Another reason not to read the question stem first is, let's say that you start with your question stem and say, okay, good, this is a flaw question. You read your stimulus, what do you think the next thing you're going to do is? You're going to read the question stem again. And we don't have time to kill in this test, guys, right? So read your stimulus first, be open-minded. A lot of times, because I may be more of like a negative thinker, I'll be reading like, say, a necessary assumption question, looking for flaws or looking to weaken the argument, because I just kind of like to poke holes in things. So it's good to have an open mind as you read. It's good to just, blanketly critically reason with your stimulus and then get a goal in mind, a lens to focus what you read, rather than a lens to focus as you read. Next up, all right, we're going to wrap this lesson up with a little discussion about what was said versus how was it said, okay? Too often do I see people exclusively or using kind of the majority of their time focusing on what the argument just said and completely ignoring the structure of the argument. Structure is so important, and you're going to see the next couple of lessons coming up are going to be all about structure and grammar and intro to arguments, facts and premises, validity. All this kind of stuff all leads into structure. You cannot do well on this test just focusing on the content of an argument. You have to take a look at the structure of the argument. There's a really good example of structure that I think it's pretty easy to test. If you go find a current event happening in the world right now as you're watching this video, go find one and then open up CNN, Fox, and the BBC's website. Find each one's article about the same current event and compare the structure of them. They all have different goals in mind. CNN and Fox are typically seeking to persuade you kind of quite violently, right? And then the BBC is usually just kind of trying to inform, right? They're bland and dry and just facts, right? What I would challenge you guys to do is this. Go in and try and find some structural differences, okay? That, in the next lesson we're going to cover maybe explicitly, but you should be able to do it for yourself, see how they're different. A really easy one is going to be those modifier words. Check out the adjectives that CNN and Fox use to get their point across compared to the BBC. You're going to see there's a huge difference. Okay, so the structure, knowing the structure of an argument goes a long way. Now, another easy example I can give you about structure, is this. So I'm kind of sitting right here in front of this camera. I'm looking relatively professional in front of you guys. I've got a good presentation, a good setting, I would think. But imagine if I was doing this lesson at the beach with the wind howling, with a cheap microphone. I'm in a Hawaiian shirt. I've got a rum and coke in my hands. No matter how good my content or my course was, would you want to watch that? Probably not, because my presentation would just be crap. It would be distracting. The same thing is true in the LSAT. Presentation is still key there, just like it is in everyday life. They spend like $750,000 per test, form, literally developing these tests word for word for word. Do not be going into your LR stimuli looking for junk, okay? A lot of times students think that, you have whole statements or phrases that are just fluff. It's usually not fluff they're giving you. They're usually giving you context, okay? Pay attention to the presentation, what word choice they choose to use, and question yourself, why say something like this instead of saying something another way, a simpler way, a less redundant way, a less, flowery way, and you will get much farther along. So we've gotten to the end of the lesson. I definitely hope you guys learned a lot. Again, I'm really excited for you guys to join me with this. We've got a really great course going with good analytics, and I can't wait to see all of your scores. If you've got any questions based on this lesson or want some clarification, drop me a message on the site, on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, and I'll get back to you to clear things up. Let's conquer logical reasoning together, guys. See you in the next lesson.